Hello from my side as well. I'm still completely... I think it's on actually. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm still very touched, very moved by this documentary. I guess that's similar for most of us in the room. Congratulations to this amazing movie for capturing all these voices and faces and expressions. And I've watched this for the second time now, and I'm still so moved. So thank you for this documentary, and also thank you for being here tonight and for giving us an update on what's happening, because I think the one burning question we all have is what's happening in Kiev right now? What happened in 2015 and 2016? What happened last Sunday when you had your last Pride Parade?
Yeah, so last Pride Parade, and actually the first successful Pride Parade, it was really successful. So like around 2,000 people were marching really in the city center, really in a central street. Like the road of the march was 750 meters. That's it? Yeah. But it was protected by 6,500 police forces, police and army forces. They really like closed the area. They blocked like it was in Serbia, a year ago. So they blocked the area, and actually they even just let people, checked all people who wanted to take part in Pride Parade, and they made it really, really safe. And you know, we understand that police work very good because the Ministry of Internal Affairs was with us. Deputies of Ukrainian Parliament, they were there too. American Embassy, Canadian Embassy, Embassy of Netherlands, Embassy of other European institutions and countries, European Parliament members, you know, there were many important people. And we understand very good that our police, I have no, pink pluses here, so I understand it very good. So our police was protecting not LGBT community. I'm saying it, and I just sure, But what was really important, why this is a victory for us, because we were not alone marching there. Many straight people were with us. Many, not only human rights defenders, but many just people, just journalists, civil rights activists, and mothers, neighbors, friends, straight people, people with kids. They just came there because they wanted to be there, because they wanted to see that Ukraine is a real European country with European values, and in Ukraine human rights are respected. We finally got this response from the society, from the civil society, and from people, from Ukrainians who really support human rights idea. This is a big step forward for Ukraine. That's why this is a victory for us. Last year it wasn't so successful because actually last year we were marching, so police said that we can't march in the city center because it's too dangerous, and we were marching in one of the sleeping districts called Kiev, so on the riverbank, and police were not so successful, and actually the Pride March was attacked, and one policeman was really wounded hardly, and he was close to death, and luckily he survived, but honestly it was just very dangerous situation. They threw a bomb and it exploded, and it was a mess, So last year we just thought that this is a victory, that we were there, 300 people marching 500 meters, yes, so that was a success. No, that wasn't, because we were alone, and we were separated, we were blocked in a ghetto, all hetero people usually say, all these haters, they usually say that you must live somewhere in a ghetto, and you must have there your rights, your sex, your families, your kids, everything you want, somewhere on the island, Homo Island. Yeah, so they made this Homo Island for us, somewhere on the bottom of Kiev city, and actually that wasn't really proud for us, Pride Parade for us. It was just
almost nothing. But this year, that was a victory. People were with us, and we saw that Ukrainians really accepted us as a part of their society. So this is a big step forward. But still, we have a long way to go, because this is Kyiv. This is a capital city. And you know, Ukraine is big. Ukraine is a pretty big country, and we have 46 million population. And actually we have now 26 regions. Yeah, so we are big, and in every region situation is different. And in Kyiv city, for now, it's more or less good. Yeah, we are more or less respected, despite we still have haters that hunted people. And you know, for example, the president of Kyiv Pride, the founding member Taras, you saw him in a film. For now, he is seeking for asylum in the United States because he was hunted down, he was beaten hardly, and really, he, almost every day by email on his phone, he was receiving threats, and even in a gay club, when he was in a gay club in Kyiv, and one just boy or man just came to him and like very silent to the ear, just said to him, "I will kill you right now and here in a gay club, and you will just, somebody will find you dead in the toilet, in a washroom." And he was really scared and so on. He was really panicked after all this, and for now he's seeking an asylum in the United States, and this is really, you know, business off what happened in the United States. Yeah, so even there, like, you know, the country that from Ukraine, people see it as a island of freedom, you know, but even there you can't be free and you can't be safe. Yeah, so my speech is too long. Questions?
Not at all. I think we can listen to you for 1 hour. Very mixed signals, I would say, what you're describing. So on the one hand, the huge success of this year's Pride, but then the violence that is aggravating, or at least not going away. We saw in the documentary that international solidarity and support from outside organizations play such a big role in this. And apart from the protection that might be stronger by the police, what is it that you gain from this exchange with other organizations? And in how far can they help you overcome this aggression and this violence that is unfolding in the country?
Actually, you know, I was in activism for like almost 20 years. Yes, so we started like in 1996 with Allow Movement. So the first LGBT organization was registered in Ukraine, and the first gay magazine was open, and so on. Well, so we started this movement, and after all these years, I understand that cooperation is needed, and this is an important issue and important question that we must put in front of us, because cooperation actually is important at two levels. First is a political level, cooperation with political structures, political bodies, and between countries, right? And the second level is community cooperation. Yeah, so with cooperation with political structures, with the help of international organizations, international bodies like European Union, like international big organizations like ILGA or CUC Netherlands, for example, we can reach big goals such as political support, such as technical support for capacity development, for community mobilization. But inter-communities cooperation is also very important, because we exchange our experiences, because we share our stories, our journeys, our lives, and we support each other. You know, once in Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, Russia, Georgia, and Armenia, countries who happen to be Orthodox, you know, once we, like, you know, just having conversation with LGBT activists from all these countries, we just compared church, anti-gay church movements in these countries. And we found out that they actually the same. And then we started to investigate this thing, and we found out that this is the same thing. And they are so strong because they are going together against LGBT people. And they win because they are going together. And this is our task, to unite and actually to step together against our haters, against homophobes. And we, for now, in our region, we work pretty close with the countries who are around. Unfortunately, with Russia is now not so possible because political situation is not so good, and actually Russia and Ukraine for now have a war, and this is not possible, but we still cooperate and work with our Russian friends in LGBT networks. So they, for example, were guests on every Kyiv Pride. There were people from Russia. So we are united. Despite the war, despite all these political games, we are united because we are for human rights, you know, and we don't care what they just trying to do with these wars or their political games. Even in Toronto, last year, we were marching together. Russian and Ukrainian LGBT people, Russian Canadians, Ukrainian Canadians, people who are seeking for asylum in Canada. So from Russia and Ukraine, we were marching together for peace. Yeah, and the same march was in Washington and in New York. So we are together. We're trying to keep together because this is our future. If we will be divided, we will never win.
On this note, also a big thank you to Simona and to your entire organization for bringing all these people here and giving them a chance to exchange and to actually learn from each other on their different projects. And I'd like to turn to you because we talked before a lot, and you actually told me that the situation here in the West, if we compare it to Ukraine, is not that good as well. It's actually quite challenging for you. And we saw there were policemen in the beginning who were checking on this event to make sure everything will go safe and everything will pass as we wanted. What is the situation like here? I mean, if you compare your experience to that of Olena and Michelle, what is it like?
Well, first of all, bringing Michelle and Olena here was actually quite easy because they are currently living in Slovenia. So that was, that was just kind of like bringing to the forefront already kind of local capacities in a way. When it comes to comparisons, first of all, I don't think it's possible to compare, but I think it's possible to have a common analysis about what's happening. The first thing which I have to say is, personally, I would never consider Slovenia as part of the West. just not my upbringing. So we are Balkan, and that's how I see this country, and that's how I see this society. Maybe on occasion Central European, but definitely not something what we would understand here politically as West. So I would say probably if we would make some kind of spectrums, we're somewhere in the middle of this spectrum on a European scale. But I think we have to stick to a European scale, because if we go outside of this continent, I think the picture is very, very different. So if we stay on this scale, and what's happening here in Slovenia is that we see different kinds of manifestations of homophobia and violence and racism in society, because maybe it's not so it's not violent in the same extent to what we just saw and has been the experience of Ukraine. So the Pride Parade here, it started with the first march in 2001. And it's going to be the 16th year this year that we're going to march. And actually, we have to say that the actual parade, we didn't have violent attacks on the actual parade. There was on one of the first prides, there was a couple of old ladies throwing a few stones. Seriously. So that's so you could say, okay, not bad, considering that in some of our neighboring countries, if you go a bit down in Balkans, they've had serious challenges also to put pride in a space. For example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we still haven't seen a pride. Macedonia also, very, very difficult struggle at this moment, and the pride is still something very far away. Serbia has been having on and off a very, very difficult situation, and when we look at, for example, Montenegro, that's one of the countries which now is starting to have a bit more political also support, that the communities actually was able to put a successful pride in the space. So actually, besides Slovenia, the only other country here in former Yugoslavian region which is actually successful with this is Croatia. And also this year we saw first Kosovo Pride, and then in Albania we had a march on the 17th of May. So something also in the Balkans, it's moving forward. But still in these 16 years here, we see that there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure because here the predominant perception is that pride is actually, and the way pride is manifested here is something that actually shouldn't be happening. Because, you should just kind of like live your life, keep in the closet, try to be as everybody else, be normal, and then, and actually then if you just kind of hide your sexuality, and if you can pass as normal, then actually you wouldn't experience any discrimination, so you should be happy about it and just kind of shut up and go home, And I'm maybe being a bit strong in my language on this, but I think that's another kind of oppression of people. It's different. So people that march in the Pride here, in the 16 years we've managed to have from about 200 participants to roughly 1,200 last year. So 16 years, for us it's a huge success, but still, in this country, in this city, there's 250,000 people in more the central region, and then if with a few sleep towns around, 350,000 people easily. So in kind of like a progressive Western community, 10,000 people like they have in Zagreb shouldn't be a big deal, no?
What is it that is holding you back?
I think that what's holding people back is that simply they lack this political will in a way. They don't necessarily see the connection for themselves. For LGBT people, it's difficult because going to the Pride means that's the most. It's the most public outing possible. There are levels of how you have to out yourself as a homosexual person in your life. And I think going to the Pride, at least here, it's the ultimate outing because there's a camera. And that camera is going to film you and it's going to stay forever. And your grandma and the great aunt in the grave of your grandma is going to know about the fact that you were in the Pride. And your boss is going to know that you were in the Pride. And people simply don't want to have that fight in their personal life sometimes. And so that's the kind of pressure that I think the average LGBT person has here. And then there is the other part, which is addressing violence, for example, and what's happening, especially with this kind of political climate that endorses groups and people actively acting hateful towards LGBT people. Because, sometimes this society likes to forget some also achievements of previous system that we had before independence. And, if you ask the generation of my parents, one of the things which was very, very highly valued was something called bon ton. Or something where, like you were also, even in school, you were graded according to how you also behave towards other people, towards your classmates, in society and so on. So there were certain things which were just socially not acceptable. So beating somebody up on the street was socially not acceptable, and you would be penalized by your little environment, in the village, in the school, or whatever, and you would be rewarded if you acted, in solidarity, in those kind of values, no matter how propagandistic they were sometimes, but actually they touched down to the grassroots of people's lives. And now I feel more and more we live in a society where it's actually there is no a strong kind of, movement or leadership on this kind of level, and everything kind of goes, and in this everything kind of goes, then you have this kind of more extremist political language, you have a lot of hate speech, and actually there's this like I said before, even endorsement of violence. And you are, you know, if you beat up a gay man or you know, you make sexist comments for a lesbian, your bodies will be like, you know. And I think that's a big problem that we have, and it's getting worse. Again, it's not, you can't compare, but still, that doesn't mean that what's happening here is not very alarming.
I think that's a very, very interesting point, this kind of tension that's building up both in Ukraine but also here. How do you keep mobilizing people to support your cause? How do you manage that people want to stay at home because they're afraid?
Well, I would first add to Simona's speech that, you know, I'm kind of business immigrant or something like that. I just moved my business from Ukraine to Slovenia, and that's why I'm here. And actually, I like spent part-time in Ukraine and then back to Slovenia. So, and like that, so like few years already. So I can compare. And I really see what Simona recently said. Yeah. And what is really interesting that this is really close to Ukrainian mentality. Well, so, and again, I think that we would unite our experience here, and I would like Ljubljana Pride be in Ukraine and like share this experience and share the ways people go to overcome this, you know. So, for example, the thing that was with referendum, for marriages for same-sex couples in Slovenia, I predict that the same way Ukraine will go the same way. Yeah. So, Ukrainian government now obligated to adopt equal partnership at least, and I believe they will also stag it in a parliament, and they will try to push it on a referendum or something like this. You know. So you already had this way. So, and you have something to share, how you did this and that, and you know, just warn us so we would not make this or that mistakes and so on, you know. Well, because this is the same system and the same institutions and things are kind of the same, you know. Well, and actually, you are like 10 years in front of us, yeah. And I understand that community, that people maybe partly just burn out, you know, when you just all the time meet the same mentality, meet the same in society. You just one day you just sit down and close your hands and say like, okay, I'm tired. Yeah. So in Ukraine, the moment now it's like you had maybe in 2001, because people are tired of silence. Yeah. People were like in the closet for so many years, and for now they are happy to come out. You know, when we started Kiev Pride in 2012, we wanted to just make it in Kiev. We wanted to protest against this anti-gay propaganda bill, you know, and we got a huge response from communities in other regions. People were calling us, texting us, writing to us, we will come. Just say when and where we will come and take part. And yeah, we even had gay guys and lesbian girls that were saying like, we are not afraid of anyone. We will just create a small LGBT army, and we will protect the Pride Parade. We will beat them back, you know. So that was really, you know, I saw that people are really ready to get up and fight for their rights, because they were tired to sit in a closet and they were tired to be oppressed. And of course, in a few years, they will again burn out. You know, this is a normal process. And I think that we just need to find approaches and methods how to make people burn again. You know, that's it. And that is not easy. You know, unfortunately, the fear is the most mobile thing. So what happened to Orlando for now is moving thing for all Western countries, you know. So they finally understood that it is not so safe as they used to think, right? And for now, I think that pride parades all over the West would be more political, not so like festivals and celebrations, but more political, really.
Do you want to comment on the situation in Slovenia? How did you manage? You have a really good group of people here. We've met a lot of them, very engaged people. How do you keep on engaging them? How do you make them burn for the cause?
I mean, here we have by now also, I think, quite a fair number of LGBT organizations. And of course that helps, and LGBT activism here, and especially gay and lesbian activism, actually started in the 80s. So it already has kind of a strong base, as a roots. Here in the 80s, it was from the former Yugoslavia. It was the first environment that an organized gay and lesbian groups and movement started. And we have strong cultural production in some areas of culture and art. And I think that's very important, because you have something which we dare still to call a community. And so, of course, in order to in a way fuel an organization like Pride, or a festival like Pride, of course we need the community inside to support. But I think what we are trying to do is in the Pride Association, we focused in the last 2-3 years a lot on working with young people. And actually just trying to engage young people and the issues that are also actually quite close to younger generations, because sometimes they are different to the experiences that already activists of being active 20-30 years in this business in a way have. And actually this year everything which we're doing is depending on the work of the volunteers and international volunteers, but also a lot of local amazing people, and they are very diverse themselves. Like part are from LGBT community, but also just students or just young people who actually just want to support a cause that they believe in. And for us, because here in Slovenia we don't have such a strong culture of protesting, and we have a very low right now participation level also of young people in these more traditional organizations, where you have a structure and you have some leadership and so on. And so actually we are very proud that despite these trends, we managed to actually have a very, very important team that helps us do this.
It's amazing. And we've heard a little bit about the situation here in Slovenia, in Ukraine. I'd like to bring you in, Michelle, as a little bit the outside viewer, yeah? You were born in England, you lived in Canada, and then you're kind of commuting between Ukraine and Slovenia. And you're doing documentaries, meaning you're interviewing people, you get in touch with a lot of them. How do you assess the situation? Especially for you, you said you transitioned quite late. How did you feel the acceptance in the different countries that you lived in?
Great question. I think one of the fundamental things is creating safe space. And in Canada in particular, I came out in Canada late, age 50 in 2011. But I came out in a relatively safe space. And what we see with Pride, Toronto Pride, Montreal Pride that I've participated in, and many of the other prides, they create safe space. And as a result of that, people feel safe to come on out and to celebrate, right, the hard work that's gone before. Because none of these prides started out as celebrations. None of them, right? Toronto Pride back in the 70s and 80s was far from a celebration. And today what we saw that on the film in 2014, 30,000 participants walked down Yonge Street in downtown Toronto, with about 1 to 2 million people looking on, and an extensive police presence. But they were at the front of the march, right? Not protecting the participants. So the safe space had been created. I think what's going to be interesting, and I know Toronto Pride are going through struggles right now as they're preparing for their upcoming Pride after the events in Orlando, because now all of a sudden we're back under threat, and there's a possibility, even in the far west, that there's going to be fanatical backlash, right, from one or two extreme people that's going to really upset things. So now that safe space is being called into question again. So it's going to be interesting to watch how the North American in particular prides, and I know UK Pride is going through the same thing actually in London, how they're going to go ahead and still create that safe space and allow people to come out. I think the other important thing too is that as prides evolve, you get to a position where straight allies come out and march with us in pride parades. And so what we saw in 2014, the very first time that Ukraine marched in Toronto Pride, actually 60% or more of the participants were straight allies, right? They weren't members of the LGBT community at all, but they had a fundamental belief in universal human rights and that Ukraine should have a voice.
So I think we heard a lot of impressive stories here, and I just want to look at the audience if anyone wants to make a comment or has a question about everything we saw in the documentary. I mean, there's a lot. So if you feel like asking something, yeah, like we kind of try to do this.
I can just speak louder if you want. Yeah. First of all, it's really impressive, all of the stories. Thank you very much for sharing. What I wanted to ask is, I've heard other stories from other prides as well, which has been dangerous or quite problematic. For example, Baltic Pride as well a few years ago and so on. And I always hear as well from people from the West as people from the East, very often is like, but you know, this is the wrong approach. We're doing it wrong because pride is for other societies. We need to wait for society to develop and then maybe we will do it. I'm not saying this is my opinion, absolutely not, but this is what I've heard very often. So my question is, what would you say to these people? Why do you think that pride is important to make, especially in these situations?
I think one of the things here is that we use one word to describe two different things. And so pride in the far West today, honestly, for the most part, is a celebration. Pride in Ukraine, in Slovenia, in other Eastern countries in particular, in Africa, the concept of pride is strictly a protest and a demonstration and a demand for human rights. And what's confusing the general population globally is we use that one word to describe two entirely different experiences. My thoughts.
Right. And in Ukraine, you know, the things really happened after people really understood that protesting is something that really works, you know. 2012, nobody believed that the demonstration could change something, yeah. But then we had Maidan, and people were protesting there, and that result to the total change of the whole country. The president escaped, you know, people elected the new one, and people finally believed, oh my God, if we are protesting on the street, we can just achieve something. And only after Maidan, after revolution, people really believed in Kyiv Pride. I was like organizing member, and I was working with media for Kyiv Pride, you know, for the first 3 years, and the change was huge. You know, first year, that was just, they were laughing at us, you know. Second year, they were expecting for the blood, you know. In 2013, when the mayor of Munich was there, they were expecting really that everybody will die there or something like this, you know. Like, I think we had more journalists there than participants. Really, because we hadn't enough buses for journalists, you know. They were there and they arrived on their own cars. They are not afraid of anything, you know, and they were waiting for, oh my God, would somebody be killed today or not, you know? Well, they were looking for a sensation, you know. But then, after Maidan, everything changed, you know. And they suddenly believed in this, that protest can really work, you know. And the media really believed in the concept of human rights, that if we are protesting, so we will reach our goal. So it really worked like this, you know. And the other thing that, as Michelle said, we have one word for describing different processes, yeah. And actually for ex-Soviet mentality, being on the street and performing something like or demonstration or celebration is like not very common, you know. So for Western mentality, it's more close to the perception of the world, you know. For Western mentalities, like just common sense or something like that, you know. So for Ukrainians, it's not so. For Russians, it's like, it's just a shame being on the street and protesting, you know. And in Russia, by the way, this is forbidden. So if people are protesting on the street, they could be arrested, even if I just stay with one poster, you know. So this is not in our mentality, and this is quite different for our two worlds.
I have also a question. I do not know the numbers of refugees from the Ukraine, but is there a link between what you are achieving, and are there less refugees from Ukraine? Do you know something about this? Because it's very good and very brave to come out, because you are an example for your people in the Ukraine.
Right, you know, I know personally one LGBT refugee from Ukraine. He was seeking for asylum in Netherlands, in Amsterdam, for I think 3 or 4 years. Now he got the status and everything is okay. He's legal there. Yes, you know, in Ukraine everything makes it now, and for now we have a lot of war refugees. And all these people, including LGBT people, they are looking for asylum in Europe. Unfortunately, many of them just going back to Ukraine because this effort is not successful. Yeah, because actually the war is not official, right? And European country, every European country, yeah, according to inner laws, but they can just say that this is the inner war, and actually in Ukraine there are safe regions, so you're going back, yeah. Despite, for example, for LGBT people, this is just awful, because in Crimea, the Russian, this anti-gay propaganda law works, and in the new, this independent republics that they make in Donetsk and Lugansk in Ukraine, they have a special legislation, and they adopted in this legislation special punishment for being gay or lesbian. Yeah, they don't think about trans people. I think they don't know nothing about it. Yeah, but for gays and lesbians, they have a special punishment or something like that. So this is really dangerous for LGBT people to be there. And now in Kyiv we have shelter for LGBT people, for refugees who ran out of the war, and some of them try to get asylum in Europe, but not so successful as I know. Yeah.
I think what's interesting too is the lived experience. You know, I've been lucky, I think that's the word I'm going to use, to have experienced being trans and being a trans lesbian too, which also just adds to the foray. In Canada, here in Slovenia, and in Ukraine. In Ukraine, definitely there's a sense of fear. You know, I'm forever absolutely aware of my surroundings, and you know, just being careful. I'm not going out at night, certainly not alone, and you know, it's just not safe for me particularly, but for us to live there. In Canada, where I came out, I actually converted a small rural conservative town, and that's a whole nother story. But what I experienced there was not direct transphobia and not direct homophobia, but pure ignorance, and ignorance that was admitted to. And this is different because you can deal with that. You know, with that you can open up a conversation. Right, you can invite somebody to have a cup of coffee and let's talk about it, right? Can't do that in Ukraine. Right? That's just not possible. Slovenia, in my experience, I've been living here now for 9 months. this trip. And you know, for me in Sele, I've actually had, you know, a positive experience. I find myself aware of what's going on around me. I'm not completely blasé, but by the same token, I've never felt in fear of being harassed, of any violence, and so on. In Ljubljana, I'm a little more cautious because I am aware that there is some violence that occasionally happens here. So, you know, I'm on slightly heightened awareness, but even still, you know, I'm not really fearful here. So I think that's encouraging. I think it's encouraging. Passive homophobia doesn't help us very much because it still discriminates at the very fundamental level. But at least with that form, one can have an open dialogue, and there's an opportunity for discussion and for learning. But visibility is absolutely key. And visibility can only happen if safe space is created. Acceptance in general society cannot be achieved without visibility. And you know, and that's important too.
I was just wondering, so what really happens with trans people in Ukraine? I mean, is there any organization? Because I have no clue, so I just watched this. I didn't know exactly what was happening, and after this, like, I'm still not back, you know, to here. Yeah. And I can imagine that if this is the response to what is happening, I'm sorry, but I come from Greece, and you know, Pride for us, it's more like a party, and actually I'm pretty critical to that, and I think it was this year, the first year, that it started to be a little bit more political, but I mean, maybe for you, maybe for other countries who are really struggling just to be on the stage, you know, it's like, come on, but for me, it's not a point just to be colorful and say, woohoo, you know. Right. It's a good point. I'm really happy that it happens and it can happen, which doesn't mean that we are not sexist and patriarchist, right? You know. But on the other side, I really feel that this has a completely different identity, and it's not about just, you know, partying. It's about trying to share awareness, try to inform people about what is happening in Ukraine, for example, you know, and everything. So. Yeah, I just saw that, and then I was like, oh fuck, what about trans people?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for trans people, of course, like, it's always harder because everything depends on, like, if you pass or not. Yeah, so if you like pass and nobody can recognize, everything's okay. Yeah. And actually, trans movement started like maybe around 10 years ago, and there was like small groups, and then one organization was like occupied with trans questions, and for now we have 3 organizations. Yes, and unfortunately they are not working together. Oh, yeah, always happen to LGBT organizations, you know. Well, but I think this is, you know, like in every development we have stages, you know, and there is a chaotic stage. This is it. And I think they will find their points of cooperation because, like, one stays on genderqueer position, the other stays on medicalization position, and so on, you know. So, and they fighting for different fields. So one organization tries to make the procedure of changing documents easier, so people can change documents without any like surgery or hormonal therapy. So like. And the other organization works with the Ministry of Health, because actually the procedure that we have for people for transition is really awful. You know, people need to be in a psychiatric clinic for 45 days and so on. So for now they made it like not so strict. So you must not stay in this clinic. You can just come for to a doctor, to visit a doctor for a few days or something like this. Yes, so they can make a differential diagnosis and so on. So, and then they try to make the surgery, possibilities for surgery in Ukraine, closer to trans people, because honestly, the quality of the work that we have in Ukraine, I think 2 or 3 surgeons who make the sex reassignment surgery for trans people, and their work is really poor, you know. They really do awful things with people, and I think in 2007 2 trans women just died out of complications after the surgery. So, and of course nobody investigated, nobody was punished, nothing, you know. And for now we have organizations, so 2 girls and 1 boy in there, and they try to work with the Ministry of Health to change all this and to make the procedure really clear, you know, and transparent, so trans people can take part in it, you know. And our Ministry of Health actually inventing a wheel instead of just take practices out of countries that do it for years, like Canada, for example, right, or Netherlands, yeah, or other European countries, and take those procedures and adopt in Ukraine. They invent their own will, despite they were never even studying or searching or transsexuality or doing, I don't know, research or something like this. That's only we doing this. So for now we have 2 studies made out of small groups of trans people in Ukraine. You know, community does this. Ministry of Health never, but they know better what we need, right? So, and people try to fight. And for now we are trying to fight connections with big trans organizations, again, like this World Association of Trans Health Specialists, right? And just try to make connections with them to help Ukrainian organizations, and maybe to provide an education program for Ukrainian doctors or something like this. You know, to at least we need specialists who will just understand how to prescribe a hormone therapy for trans person, you know, or what surgeon actually must do to make a person like good, not bad, you know. And I think we will just reach this goal, not like in 1 year, not in 2 years, but people working on it, and they are really brave, you know. So, yeah.
And it's not rocket science, right? It's not rocket science, and a lot of very competent surgeons worldwide have been working in this area, and WPATH in particular. We have the standards of care that were based on the Harry Benjamin standards of care from years ago. We have these things in place. They're working effectively in other countries. There is absolutely no reason why Ukraine should not be adopting some of those standards of care. But also, to just balance up a little bit of perspective, in Canada we are still fighting for fundamental transgender rights. So only 4 weeks ago, Bill 616 was introduced into Parliament to establish some fundamental anti-discrimination law in Canadian legislature. So we're not finished there either yet.
So I think there's still a lot we can discuss. Did you want to ask a question?
No, at the end I would like to say a few words, but if there are questions.
I'll just ask a final question to the panelists, actually, because we talked about the importance of visibility, and we saw in the documentary there's a lot of that in Toronto. And so, just to end on a positive note, will we ever see flags, LGBT flags flying from balconies, colored donuts, colored roses, I don't know what? Will we ever get to the point to see it here in Slovenia and in Ukraine?
First of all, the visual identity of this year's Ljubljana Pride Festival is black and pink. So that's just a sub-note towards the rainbow. But that's also connected with the historic way symbolism of the pink and the black, which comes from actually the time of Nazism, with the triangle signalization for homosexual and for gay men and for lesbian women. Which and this year's message is against racism, all forms of racism and homophobia. So it was a very important link also in visual identity. When it comes to rainbows, what we have here in Ljubljana, we have a rainbow flag on the Pride Day being flung down from the castle tower, for example. We made the suggestion 2 years already in a row to paint the cross, the zebras, to paint them in a kind of rainbow color, and the mayor says, "You're not touching my city." And we tried also to ask for a signalization on traffic lights, like in Vienna, with kind of couples, and things like this. It was also like, "You're touching my city." No. Flag hanging on the municipality, yes. One day of the castle being lighted in rainbow colors, yes, but only one day, because in the referendum campaign they did it for several days, and now they have a court suit against them. Actually, this visibility, it's something that we've been trying to work together with the municipality, and part of it is difficult because it costs money, and we don't have money for promotion, and we don't have money for banners, and we don't have money for space to pay for space to put the posters and all of these things. So that's part of it, where it's difficult to have visibility, because here legally we could if we had money for it. The other part is what the city actually does in terms of support, and there are some, there is some symbolism, but it's not comparable to Vienna or to Brussels or to other European cities, the bigger prides, the celebration prides, where rainbow donuts. Let's wait and see. They might appear. We never know.
There comes a point where even business realizes it's good business, right, to respond to and support the LGBTQ community. And we saw that Loblaws was where we were shooting the donuts. And Loblaws is one of the largest food retailers in Canada. And that was not just in their Church Street store, by the way, with Church Street being the LGBT district in Toronto. We actually saw that outside of Toronto and in other areas. And this year, for the very first time ever, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau flew the rainbow flag on Parliament Hill. That had never happened before. Never happened. And this year, the Prime Minister will march in Toronto Pride. That's never happened before either. So there's still advancements going on even in Canada. And Ukraine, rainbow flags?
Actually, this is one of our strategies. So we try to convince the city, like the media, the public, that everybody will win out of a Pride celebration in Kyiv. So this is like touristic opportunity. Tourists will come to see the Pride, and the city will win. Hotels will win, and businesses will win. But this strategy works not very good in Ukraine still, right? Because I think maybe people are not ready to believe that really somebody will come and see the Pride and buy something here, and like, I don't know, Ukrainian flag with rainbow or something like this, So people still do not believe, but we even translated some of these researches they have in USA and Canada, how like gay tourism or pride marches influence the local economies and how they actually help people to raise money and so on. So maybe this strategy will work and convince people who do not believe in the success of Pride Parade that maybe in this case LGBT people can be useful for you if you do not believe in human rights or something like that. So we're still trying.
We'll cross our fingers, all of us.
Thank you to this amazing panel. Thank you for your work. And I'd like to hand over to Felicita for final remarks.
Well, before I wish you a nice continuation of this evening at the Cultural Center ROC, I believe that is the ROC, yes, which is a story of itself these days. I would like to thank the organizers, Simona, and of course Caroline from the Friedrich Neumann Foundation, our member organization, all the speakers, Sandro, Aldo, Olena, and Michelle. Congratulations for your documentary. And perhaps just for a reflection. Now imagine the world of human rights and freedoms, where nobody would have to fear anyone. In such a world, I believe, human rights and freedoms would be self-evident, as they were also written in one of the first documents on our globe on this issue. But they are not as self-evident as yet. So therefore, I think in such a world, we would not need borders, because everybody could be safe. We would not talk about asylum, because migration would only be an individual, free decision. Maybe we would still talk about frontiers, but frontiers in the way of expansion, because I think that the human spirit and humanity always looks forward to expand, to grow, to emancipate itself. But until then, unfortunately, we still talk about borders. We still talk about safe and unsafe places. And when I listened to the first debate, I thought, well, until then, maybe, at least in Europe, we should really fight for the common asylum system. Of course, some documents exist, but they are mainly on procedures, not on the status and the grounds for the status itself. But only the status also gives certain rights and obligations. These are connected. And as a liberal, I always see these two matters connected. You, with the Pride, either a festival or a protest, be it in the West, like it was sometimes the Wild West, the wild frontier, the zone of expansion. But frontiers are also spaces and areas of interaction, of exchanges of our culture, of our thought, of your experiences. That's why I believe it is sometimes good to work in this frontier, and you have lived it yourself. It was seen on this movie. I was really touched by this documentary that you had an island there. That was the frontier you have to expand. So with maybe this positive thought also for my own country, Slovenia, of course we will not solve all these issues. What is the family? What is not the family? So on. But we have to go and break these frontiers. And borders, I always think, are artificial, and they are for all of us to erase them. So I thank you very much for this event. I have learned a lot, and as I say, enjoy your evening and the rest of the week. All the best to you, a lot of success.